Yes, I've started the webinar.
Good evening, members. You're welcome to this CPE. Let us humble ourselves for a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you very much for the moment. We are gathered here to change ourselves and at large to change the nation. Please grant us the ability to learn, and we bless our speaker and all the moderators and the panelists. In your name we've prayed. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Sharon, for our prayer. This time round, our chat is up, so we shall be using it. So feel free to post in your questions as the session is going on. All your questions will be attended to or answered at the end of the session. Please feel free to type in all the questions in the chat box or use the Q&A session. I want to take this opportunity to introduce to our moderator tonight or this evening, this morning, depending on from where you're joining us from. Our moderator this evening or tonight is Ms. Sharon Cindy. Sharon has 10 years working experience in communications, networks, auditing, risk, governance. She's a data communications engineer by profession, and she has attained academic degree from Mbarara University of Science and Technology. Sharon worked in the banking industry or has worked in the banking industry for 4 years, and specifically in banking and business technology section. She worked as a project regional ICT personnel supervising tier 4 institutions for automation, digital integration into operations for financial inclusion. She's currently employed as the IS auditor at the Uganda Railways Corporation, where she provides assurance on systems, governance, risk, and compliance through audits. Sharon is a profound member who joined ISACA in 2016. She's a CISA, CISM, and COVID-19. As part of her career growth journey, Sharon has attained various certificates: ISO 27001 transition, ISO 27005, IS risk manager, and ISO 27002, ISM controls, CCNA, MCSA, and OCA. And currently, she's on her career growth journey to become a CDIPS. Sharon is a volunteer at ISACA Kampala chapter as a member of the education committee, and she's also a Shillid State Committee member. And she has a family. Has a family and one loving daughter. Thank you very much, Sharon. You're most welcome. Sharon, please take us away. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rita. I'm humbled by the invitation. A good evening and greetings to us all from wherever we are in the parts of the world. We welcome you. I take this opportunity to welcome all of us to this session. It's going to be a wonderful one. So glad to be the moderator. I hope I'm clear to us all. Rita, am I? Rita, am I clear? Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. So after those few words, we are glad as ISACA Kampala chapter to be having a very interesting topic. The theme today is threat intelligence and information sharing, exploring its role in enhancing cyber resilience. We are so glad to have with us a very wonderful person, the best choice we having the ISACA president, the ISACA South Africa chapter president, Mr. Palliam. He's going to be our speaker through these next 2 hours of the CPE. Allow me to take this moment to introduce our speaker, Mr. Palliam Kenneth. Mr. Paliam is the president of ISACA South Africa chapter. He has extensive experience on the board, having served previously as the Academic Relations Director, Membership and Education Director, Program Director, and Vice President. He is a Platinum member of ISACA and has the following certifications. He is a CISA, the Certified Information Systems Auditor. He is certified in Risk and Information Systems Controls, that is CRISC. He is certified in Governance of Enterprise Information and Technology, that is Seagate. Mr. Paliam is still certified in Data Privacy Solutions in NIA, that's CDEPS. Kenneth has obtained a Bachelor's of Science and postgraduate PGDA qualifications. He's a member of the IRPAAI, that is the Institute for Robotic Process Automation and Artificial Intelligence. Mr. Paliam is as well a member of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. In addition to that, Kenneth is currently the IT Risk Manager for Shoprite Technologies. In sum, he has over 20 years of experience and for having worked predominantly in consultancy services and financial services, providing IT advisory, IT assurance, risk governance services. He has completed his financial audit articles and has extensive experience in enterprise resource planning, operational and reporting systems. So that is our great speaker that we have with us in these hours to come. We are glad to have you, Mr. Paliam Kenneth. We welcome you to this session. Please take it away. Let us hear from you what you have in regard to the theme, the topic. We welcome you.
Thank you, Sharon. So thank you, Sharon, for that introduction, and thank you to Bernard, the president of the Kampala chapter, and the board of the Kampala chapter for inviting me to speak to you today on threat intelligence and information sharing, and how exploiting its role in enhancing cyber resilience. So let me just share my presentation. Okay, kindly confirm that it's in presentation mode and you can see it.
Yes, we can see it. It's in presentation mode.
Okay, thank you. So whilst I'm speaking, I don't have access to view the chat, or if there's any questions, Sharon will interject and alert me to any questions that you may have. And yeah, and I must say, you know, it's very heartwarming to see that, you know, we have so many people on the chat, on the call, especially on a Friday evening, to listen to this topic on threat intelligence and information sharing. So, you know, it's a very broad topic, and there's lots of ways that one could have, you know, presented it. So I hope I do it justice, and I'm happy to take any questions, either during the presentation or at the end of the presentation. I'm sure there will be plenty of time for a discussion at the end. So just in terms of an agenda for this evening, I'm going to start off with an introduction. I'll speak about, you know, cyber threat intelligence, and then information sharing, cyber resilience, and then I'll speak about cyber threats and risks, and then about responding to cyber threats, mitigating cyber risks, and then the benefits of utilizing threat intelligence. There's specifically some things that I haven't that I won't be covering, but as we proceed through the presentation, I'll mention those areas. So firstly, in terms of an introduction, in terms of today's interconnected digital landscape, cybersecurity threats are increasing in sophistication, their frequency, and their impact. And they target, governments, large multinational corporations, small and medium enterprises, and individuals worldwide. It would seem that no one is safe from being targeted. So simply put, knowing what cyber threats are out there will enable you to put in place measures to protect your company or yourself. And threat intelligence and information sharing have proven to be a valuable tool in enhancing cyber resilience. So in this presentation, we'll define and explore the components of the threat intelligence, information sharing, and cyber resilience before delving into the benefits of combining them to create a more effective cybersecurity strategy. So in terms of threat intelligence provides valuable insights into the top cyber attacks currently being employed by threat actors and includes data and analysis that gives security teams a comprehensive view of the threat landscape so that they can make informed decisions about how to prepare for, detect, and respond to attacks. Having focused information which is shared within a trusted community about how bad actors behave, their tools and techniques, their exploits, the vulnerabilities that they target, and the emerging threats can help your organization prioritize its security efforts. This information could come from internal sources such as network monitoring tools, or from external sources such as cybersecurity experts, threat intelligence platforms, government agencies, and other organizations within similar industries. I mentioned threat intelligence platforms. So there are a number of vendors who have such tools that one can procure and have, providing you, so you connect it to your network and it will provide you with some sort of metrics in terms of threat intelligence. And again, there are many vendors out there, and I'm not going to speak about any threat intelligence platforms per se or mention any vendors. So in terms of threat intelligence, there are 4 categories which can help you to decide who needs to receive what information. So firstly, in terms of the categories, so from a strategic perspective, strategic threat intelligence is high-level analysis for non-technical stakeholders concerned with the overall business, such as C-suite executives, IT management, and boards of directors. Communicate this type of information in a broad context with the long term in view. These audiences must manage overall risks, such as how the general threat landscape is evolving, how a business decision might introduce new vulnerabilities, how advanced technology is helping businesses mitigate threats at a lower cost, or what the potential financial and operational implications of a breach are. The next category talks about tactical. So at a tactical level, tactical threat intelligence is information cybersecurity experts that need to take immediate action to mitigate threats. It includes technical information about the most current tactics, techniques, and procedures, and trends in this regard. And it also includes indicators of compromise and is usually consumed by IT service managers, your security operations center, employees, and architects. So we use this type of intelligence to make decisions about security controls and create proactive defense strategies. This type of information is always in flux, and it can be automated to help security teams maintain maximum agility. And this is where those threat intelligence platforms come into the picture. Again, when it comes to implementing any type of solution, it also brings along its own additional risks that one needs to be mindful of. The next category is at an operational level. So operational threat intelligence is knowledge about specific threats and campaigns. It provides specialized information for incident response teams about an attacker's identity, their motivations, their methods, and it enables security professionals in your organization to receive this kind of intelligence more efficiently with a cyber threat intelligence platform that automates data collection, translating foreign language sources, if that's needed. And then the fourth category is the technical level. So at a technical level, there's closely aligned with operational intelligence. Technical threat intelligence refers to signs that an attack is happening, such as indicators of compromise. Use a threat intelligence platform with artificial intelligence to automatically scan for these types of known indicators, which can include phishing email content, malicious IP addresses, or specific implementations of malware. Your security operations center and incident response teams can respond rapidly to this information and prevent damage to your business. So one of the questions that I get is there a need for a cyber threat intelligence framework? So, you can put in the chat if you've come across any standards when it comes to cyber threat intelligence, but I'm not aware of any standards. I have seen in practice cyber threat intelligence frameworks, but these are developed specifically for that organization. And there are certain guidelines that you can find in terms of what information should be contained into the cyber threat intelligence framework. And then this will also speak to your overall information security or cybersecurity frameworks as well. So the next part in terms of the presentation is in terms of information sharing. So information sharing involves the sharing of threat intelligence between organizations within the same industry or across sectors. The shared information often includes threat indicators such as IP addresses, URLs and malware samples that can help organizations better protect themselves against cyber threats. Vendors of threat intelligence platforms may also share information within certain communities or amongst their customers through forums, alerting to some of the things that have been detected in some of their other installations of their cyber or threat intelligence platforms. So, with a multitude of inputs into your cyber threat intelligence framework, an organization will need to rationalize and decide what are the things that are most important to them, and then develop and structure their framework accordingly. So in terms of the benefits of information sharing, it there's early detection and response. So sharing threat intelligence enables organizations to detect emerging threats early and respond promptly, reducing the impact of cyber attacks. Then secondly, in terms of enhanced situational awareness, information sharing provides a broader view of threats, helping organizations better understand evolving tactics and identify potential risks. Thirdly, improved incident response capabilities. Access to timely and relevant threat intelligence strengthens incident response strategies, enabling organizations to mitigate cyber attacks more effectively. Collective defense. Collaborative information sharing creates a united front against cyber threats as organizations pool resources and knowledge to protect their ecosystems. And then there's strengthened cyber resilience. By leveraging threat intelligence and participating in information sharing initiatives, organizations can enhance their overall cyber resilience. In terms of cyber resilience refers to an organization's ability to prepare for, respond to, and recover from cyber threats. It involves having a comprehensive cybersecurity strategy that identifies, assesses, prioritizes, and manages cyber risks. And hence, I earlier said that, in conjunction with your cybersecurity strategy, you will have your cyber threat intelligence framework, and collectively, these pieces will help provide the governance around what it is that the organization needs to do. Cyber resilience considers both the technical measures required to protect against threats and the processes required to mitigate the impact of an attack. Effective cyber resilience must be an enterprise-wide, risk-based strategy, a collaborative approach driven from executives to everyone in the organization, partners, supply chain participants, and customers. It must proactively manage risks, threats, vulnerabilities, and the effects on critical information and supporting assets. Effective cyber resilience also involves governance, risk management, and understanding of data ownership and incident management. Assessing these characteristics also depends and demands experience and judgment, because there's no one size fits all in terms of what it is that we need to achieve in this regard. So next, I want to talk about cyber threats and risk. But before I get to those cyber threats and risk, perhaps you want to put in the chat, what is your understanding between the difference between a threat and a risk?
Okay, members, I call us upon to participate. Kenneth, may you please bring the question once again? You echo
Okay.
it, please.
So the question is, what is the difference between a threat and a risk? Sometimes we use these terms interchangeably, but in order to progress the discussion, I want to just allude to the distinction between what is a threat and what is a risk. So if anybody is brave enough to hazard a guess or put something in the chat in terms of what their thinking is when it comes to what is a cyber threat and what versus what is a cyber risk. So Sheldon, I see it looks like Are there any comments?
We haven't yet gotten a comment, but I believe along the way we are going to get a response.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, we have one from Emmanuel Wanyama. Thanks for your participation. A threat is imminent, a risk is more generic.
Okay.
We have now got quite a number. We have one from Brian Wagava. Using a simple comparison, a threat would be like a thief, and a risk is a probability of him stealing. Wow, that's powerful. Yes, that's
Okay.
what we have so far. Thank you,
Okay.
members.
Thank you for participating. It's always difficult to give a presentation when there's no audience, so you can't see what the reaction is from the audience in terms of gauging whether they're engaged in the discussion or not. So perhaps let me, before I speak to some of the threats and risks, let me speak about the distinction in the concepts. So whilst related, there is a distinction in terms of the concepts between cyber threat and cyber risk. So a cyber threat refers to a potential or actual act of unauthorized access, damage, disruption, or misuse of computer systems, networks, or data by individuals, groups, or entities with malicious intent. I know that sounds a lot because we covered a lot of different aspects there, but these threats can originate from various sources, such as cyber criminals, hackers, nation states, hacktivists, and even insider threats. So cyber threats encompass a wide range of activities, including malware attacks, data breaches, ransomware incidents, phishing campaigns, denial of service attacks, and social engineering exploits. The key aspect of a cyber threat is the intention to cause harm, steal information, compromise systems, or disrupt operations. Cyber risk, on the other hand, refers to the potential for financial loss, reputational damage, operational disruptions, or legal and regulatory consequences resulting from a successful cyber attack or any other adverse event related to an organization's use of information technology and digital assets. So assessing and managing cyber risk involves identifying vulnerabilities, implementing security controls, and developing incident response plans to mitigate the impact of cyber threats and enhance cyber resilience. So understanding the difference between cyber threats and cyber risk is essential for organizations to develop effective cybersecurity strategies and protect their assets from potential harm. So having covered the distinction between what a cyber threat is and cyber risk, I just want to speak to a couple of examples, and there's a lot of other examples, but in terms of recent results from publications in terms of the most prevalent types of cyber threats and cyber attacks, these are some of those most prevalent ones. So cyber criminals and state-sponsored hackers are continually developing new tactics, techniques, and procedures to circumvent security measures and exploit vulnerabilities. These attacks can have far-reaching consequences, both short and long term, such as economic losses, social upheaval, and political instability. So the cyber threats that I want to just touch on phishing attacks. Phishing attacks have been around for a long time, and they're still quite prevalent and remain among the most significant cybersecurity risks globally, with attackers using social engineering techniques to trick users into clicking on malicious links or downloading malware. And then in terms of ransomware, we've seen a sharp increase in terms of ransomware, particularly starting in 2020 during COVID lockdown. So COVID lockdown was not just specific to one or two countries. It was, essentially a global phenomenon. And during that time, and since that time, we've seen a sharp increase in the frequency and impact of this ransomware, with attackers locking users out of their own systems until a ransom is paid. Recently, one of the most significant ransomware attacks globally was the Colonial Pipeline attack, which caused significant fuel shortages in the US. And, there are a number of other examples here locally, or when I say locally, I mean in our continent of Africa, of ransomware attacks, so I don't want to go into any of examples, lest I be asked questions that I'm unable to answer. The next one is in terms of insider threats. So insider threats refer to threats posed by insiders, such as employees, contractors, and partners, who abuse their access to data or systems. Insider threats can cause significant damage to an organization and are often difficult to detect. And then the fourth, by no means the least of them, is cloud and SaaS related threats. So, in terms of, we've seen a proliferation in terms of the use of cloud services and software as a service. And related to this technology are cloud computing, which involves using a network of remote servers to store, manage, and process data instead of a local server. And software as a service refers to cloud-based applications used to carry out business operations, such as customer relationship management tools, financial software, and project management tools. Cloud and SaaS technologies offer many benefits, and I'm not going to go into the benefits of cloud computing at this stage, but they also create new cybersecurity risks. Cyber threats such as data breaches, denial of service attacks, insider threats, malware, and misconfigurations are some of the most common types of cyber attacks that target cloud services and software as a service solutions. So, responding to cyber threats. In terms of establishing information sharing partnerships, an organization should forge public-private partnerships, industry collaborations, and sector-specific sharing platforms to facilitate effective threat intelligence exchange. Now, that's easier said than done, because very often organizations within the same industry want to maintain a competitive advantage and are less, or I should say more reluctant to share information with their direct competitors. However, sometimes you need these organizations to come together to collaborate and be able to share information. So in instances where that is possible, it's an opportunity for organizations to learn what is or what's happening in their competitors' environments that they can learn from and then adequately prepare against. Then in terms of fostering trust and collaboration, and it speaks to what I spoke about earlier on in terms of, there's a lack of trust between competitors because of that competitive advantage. So, you need to create trust building mechanisms to encourage organizations to share sensitive threat intelligence without fear of disclosure. And I'm going to get to regulatory compliance later on, but when there is a data breach, and if there is regulation within the jurisdiction, organizations are compelled to release information pertaining to that breach, particularly in a South African context when it relates to personal information. So we have the POPIA Act. And in such instances, an organization is compelled to share not all, but some information with the regulator, as well as then to make it publicly available to customers that are impacted, if it's a data breach that relates to customer information, for example. Next, we'll talk about implementation of robust incident response plans. And again, it's very difficult to plan for every eventuality, but through scenario exercises, one can come up with quite a comprehensive list of things that one can do. So you develop comprehensive incident response plans that incorporate threat intelligence to detect, respond, and recover from cyber attacks effectively. Continuous training and education. Invest in cybersecurity training and awareness programs to empower employees with the knowledge and skills to recognize and respond to threats. Patch management and vulnerability scanning. Regularly update software and systems, conduct vulnerability assessments, and prioritize patching to address known vulnerabilities proactively. And then lastly, engage in cyber drills and exercises. Conduct regular simulated cyber attack drills to test incident response capabilities and identify areas for improvement. So we covered some of the threats. Now we'll speak about some of the mitigating we'll speak about mitigating some of the cyber risks. So to mitigate cyber risks, organizations should implement some of the following recommendations. Employee training and awareness. I cannot stress how important this is. Employee training and awareness should be a top priority for organizations to reduce cyber risk. Employees should be trained in how to detect and respond to phishing attacks, use strong passwords, and how to identify and report suspicious activity. Next is regular software updates. Regular software updates should be implemented to fix known vulnerabilities in software to prevent attackers from exploiting them. data backup and recovery. So when it comes to data backup and recovery, depending on the criticality of your services, your data and backup strategies may vary. You know, having previously worked at one of the big banks, in a banking environment, you know, you kind of need to be available. There needs to be high availability, especially around you know, the withdrawal of funds and things like that. So their strategy is generally the mirroring of your databases, and again, having two sets. So mirroring essentially means you have two sets of production data that are being updated in real time at the same time, and you can fail over to any one of those sites. They also use it in terms of balancing loads when it comes to transactional activity. And it's not just in the banking sector that's required. You know, even within the retail sector, you need high availability of your point of sales, for example, in terms of enabling customers to transact when they need to. So organizations should have robust data backup and recovery plans to minimize the impact of a ransomware attack. An effective backup plan will ensure that all data is secure and can be quickly restored in the event of an attack. You know, also I should mention that when it comes to data backup, you know, if you're making use of cloud services or software as a solution, copies of that data may be stored in other locations, which will enable you to quickly access that information. That's one of the benefits of using cloud services. Then in terms of the use of multi-factor authentication, so organizations should implement the use of multi-factor authentication to mitigate the risk of insider threats. And it involves using more than one method of authentication, such as passwords and fingerprint scans to secure accounts. And then we've come to compliance and regulations. So organizations should comply with the regulations that are prevalent within their jurisdiction. So, you know, you have the GDPR, or General Data Protection Regulation, that's in Europe, your Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act, which is a US piece of legislation. Is it? Sorry, I'm thinking out loud. Data Protection Act and the Protection of Personal Information Act, as it is the case here in South Africa, to protect against confidential information and sensitive data. And then the last one that I want to mention is assess third-party vendor security. Whilst last on the list, in recent times, this has been shown to be a significant point of weakness, because very often organizations do not assess the security of their third-party vendors. And I've recently heard that it should extend to fourth-party vendors. So, you know, the vendors that you engage with, going down to the vendors that they engage with. So in terms of assessing third-party vendor security, it's to safeguard against supply chain attacks, assess third-party vendor security, and ensure that the necessary security features are enabled to protect your assets. Insufficient review and validation in this area increases exposure to the ever-increasing volume of supply chain exploits. This step is affordable and may simply require enabling functionality that is available in products already in your environment. This now brings me to the benefits of cyber threat intelligence. And I'm sure you've seen it come up in terms of the different elements that, that I've spoken about earlier. And from a comprehensive threat and awareness perspective, through threat intelligence, organizations can gain a deeper understanding of the potential threats they face. This can help organizations identify vulnerabilities in their existing security posture and make proactive steps to mitigate the risks. Faster incident response. Sharing threat intelligence helps organizations stay informed about the latest threats and attack methods. This can help them respond more quickly to security incidents, reducing the impact of an attack. More accurate risk assessment. By analyzing threat intelligence, organizations can identify the most significant risks and prioritize their resources accordingly. This can help them allocate budget and resources more effectively to address potential threats. And then there's improved outcomes. So when organizations share threat intelligence with one another, they create a collaborative ecosystem that allows them to build on each other's insights and experience. This results in better outcomes as they are all working towards a common goal of improving security. And then lastly, cost efficiency, which helps reduce costs associated with hiring cyber experts, purchasing tools and technologies, and other expenses. So we reach the end in terms of closing thoughts. So when it comes to organizations, organizations must be aware of the most prevalent cybersecurity risks and implement comprehensive strategies to mitigate them. Training employees, updating software regularly, having robust data backup and recovery plans, using MFA, and complying with regulations are some of the recommendations that can help organizations mitigate cyber risks. It is also essential to leverage threat intelligence and information sharing to enhance cyber resilience. By building a collaborative ecosystem of threat intelligence and information sharing, organizations can stay ahead of the latest cybersecurity threats and better protect themselves and their stakeholders. With the increase in digitalization and the rise of cyber threats globally, it is critical that organizations take cybersecurity seriously to protect their data, systems, and reputation. So that brings me to the end of my presentation in terms of cyber threat intelligence. I don't know, are there any, I know I haven't covered the actual tools that are used within cyber threat intelligence. And I've done that deliberately because, there's a large number of vendors and each of them have different types of products that they use. I don't want to appear as if that I'm in favoring one vendor over another. But Sharon, are there any questions or anything else that members on the call would like me to expound upon or speak about?
Wow, thank you very much, Kenneth. It's been a wonderful, extremely exciting presentation. You've tackled quite a lot of things about threat intelligence and information sharing. I believe questions are going to come in, although currently, yes, we are seeing an appreciation from Joseph Lubega. It's an awesome presentation. So this, I would still want to take this opportunity to invite members on call to post their questions. Probably people were so much attentive, eager to hear from you, and they didn't type the questions. Still, as you had called upon, someone has made a comment, a lot of matters brought to light. Thank you very much, David Hamia. So as you had called upon members on the panel to see whether there is something they would suggest that you may hint on. Otherwise, from my end, as we wait for questions, I appreciated I enjoyed the categories that you brought down, the strategic, the tactical, the operational, and the technical. I see this as a very good method of breaking down the threat intelligence into those categories. So I've seen someone calling upon for what you had mentioned. Those are the tools. Let me see the question. Okay, we have a question from Pandit. Have you any recommended products or tools for risk management?
Yeah, so in terms, I don't want to recommend a specific vendor. There's quite a lot of good tools and out there, but yeah, I deliberately don't want to recommend a specific vendor, but yeah, we can. I'm also hesitant to even mention some of their names because very often it can be misunderstood that I'm trying to promote a particular vendor over and above another vendor. And some of these vendors are sponsors at our conference, and as such, we wouldn't want to alienate some of our potential sponsors.
Okay, Kenneth, maybe we see that like, yes, we have to protect when we leave the space fair. Maybe you would highlight a few of the things that you would look at in a certain tool. Questions are flowing in. Allow me read the question from Emmanuel Wanyama. What would be the best way to handle third-party vendor cyber risks where the organization does not manage third parties centrally?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Again, there's no one size fits all when it comes to managing and the extent of managing third-party vendors. Again, depending on the size of your organization, you may have not just one or two third-party vendors, but literally thousands. And I say that, being the IT risk manager for the largest retailer in Africa. And yeah, so again, we follow a risk-based approach when it comes to managing third-party vendors, depending on the extent of services that they provide, depending on the extent of access that they have into our environment. We perform security assessments. We make use of various tools to do that. And like I said, we generally follow a risk-based approach when it comes to performing those tasks.
Okay, I hope, Emmanuel Wanyama, that your question has been answered. We now have quite a number, and there is one from Deo Okelo. How do you manage risk on a large-scale organization?
Yeah, so yes, I'm just processing my answer. So in a large organization, like I said, we follow a risk-based approach. Depending on the products or services that are being performed by that particular business area, we will do a risk assessment, and then based on the results of the risk assessment, and we will and through that risk assessment process, what we do is we evaluate the effectiveness of the controls within that environment. And then based on the residual risk, it would determine what, if any, other steps we need to take when it comes to managing that that particular vendor area in the organization. So long answer short, or the short answer is that you follow a risk-based approach. And when it comes to following a risk-based approach, there is an element of it that is quantitative in nature, but very often there's a qualitative aspect to it. And, you know, through discussions with other key stakeholders, you kind of get a sense of the level of comfort that you want. So in our organization, also we have a risk appetite as well as risk tolerance levels. And that's based on a number of different factors. So again, if it's within our risk appetite and within our tolerable levels, then we will proceed with, you know, either a supplier or customer having full knowledge and understanding of what it is that we are signing up for. You know, when it comes to the purchases of software technology, you know, the cost can be very
it's very high.
Very high, yes. So when it comes to those things, we have a legal risk team that assesses the contracts from a legal perspective in terms of how we want to manage that relationship and what insights or what expectations we have when it comes to security from that third party.
Okay. Okay, that's really an in-depth. Okay, so we have some interesting, two technical and others. So I'm going to, let me bring them in as they came, but I know we are going to answer them in the interest of time. Okay.
Yeah.
I see that is Terence. I see under cyber resilience. Where are those steps? Were those steps based on NIST? If yes, why are we not including identify and protect steps? Then from that one, we shall also look at, please shed more light on vulnerability assessments.
Okay, so firstly, in terms of whether those steps are based on NIST, so, you know, NIST as a framework is a good starting point. But again, like I said, it's not a one size fits all. And even when it comes to NIST, we kind of like pick out, or the organization needs to look at it and then say, what is it out of this that I can reasonably implement? What makes sense for my business? What is it that I want to achieve in terms of my objectives? So, very often an organization will look at different frameworks. So be it ITIL, COBIT 2019, NIST, you will pick out things that would make sense for your organization. And again, depending on the scale of your operations, the extent of those controls will also depend on that. Yeah, so it was, again, when it came to the presentation, I didn't want to have an exhaustive list of controls that one would implement or things to consider, but gave you insights in terms of how to go about developing your own threat intelligence framework for your own organization.
Wow. Okay. The second one was about shed more light on vulnerability assessment practices. I believe Ronald meant how would you do this? How would you assess vulnerabilities? What are the practices?
Yeah, so again, you would either, depending on your organization, if you have a very large organization and you have thousands of suppliers and things like that, and you're doing vulnerability assessments on virtually a daily basis, you invest in tools to perform that. Smaller companies may bring in a third party to come and do a once-off, so you may hire an advisory company or consultancy company to come in, do a vulnerability assessment, provide you with results, and then you would start remediating those. Again, vulnerability assessments are a point-in-time exercise. So you could run a vulnerability assessment on your network today. Based on the outcomes, you may identify, areas for remediation, and then you run the assessment. A week later, generally, if you get a consultancy firm to come in, they're quite expensive in terms of conducting that exercise. They give you a list of things to remediate, and then they say, oh, we'll come back in a month or so, depending on the time frame that the organization gives themselves to remediate it. They'll come back, run their scans again, and give you another picture to say, how have you progressed from one time to another time? In an organization that I work for, given the number of vendors that we have, suppliers that we have, we run vulnerability assessments on our internal environments as well. So, like I said, there's teams that are continuously performing vulnerability assessments, and again, the same process holds true, is that we run the assessment, we identify vulnerabilities, we afford business the opportunity to remediate that, and then we run vulnerability assessments again. And given the scale at which we do it, we make use of tools that are available in the market to perform those tests.
Okay. Wow. So only 3 more to go, and they are a bit technical. George is asking, yes, we welcome you. I wanted to understand at high level, when implementing threat intel as a process or as a control in your environment, where do you start, other than coming up with policies and competent personnel? Okay. Ken, that's for you. Where do we start when implementing threat intel as a process? Do we start from risk? Do we start from policies? Where?
So working in risk, I'm going to say you start with the risk. But technically speaking, you would have a governance framework. So the governance framework sets out the rules for the organization in terms of expectations. And then the governance framework will then ask you to evaluate and assess the risks. And then once you assess and evaluate the risks, you will then determine to see what it is that one needs to implement to safeguard the organization. And again, through that process, and depending on the size of the organization, the nature of work that the organization does, the industry that they operate in, all of those factors need to be considered in terms of obtaining an end result. I cannot stress more that you cannot take a one-size-fits-all approach, because what works for one organization will not work or be relevant for another organization.
Yes.
Necessarily, yeah.
Okay. Lastly, Geoffrey is asking advice on frequency of companies performing failover tests to their disaster recovery sites from the primary site. Are there any regulatory requirements, for instance, for financial institutions? I repeat, please advise on frequency of companies performing failover tests to their disaster recovery sites from the primary site. Are there any regulatory requirements, for instance, for financial institutions?
Yeah, so it's been quite a few years since I worked at the bank, but when working at the bank, we had to, like I said, at the bank, we made use of mirroring. So what happens is that between our primary site and our secondary site, those databases were operating both in real time and replicating in real time from one to the other. So you always had a live environment. And I also mentioned that we used to use it as load balancing in the sense that certain services would be using the primary site as their database, and it would replicate to the secondary base in real time. Whereas other services would be using the secondary site as their primary transactional site and replicating to the secondary, to the primary site, acting as a secondary site. I know that's a bit blessing, but again, it speaks to the high availability of systems that's required in that environment. And from a regulatory perspective, I know that we had to send a letter of comfort to the South African Reserve Bank in terms of the exercise that we perform, because notwithstanding mirroring, again, an organization or the bank would look at it and say, which are the critical services that I need real-time mirroring for versus what other services that don't necessarily need that type of high availability that we will still make use of, tape or some other type of backup media in terms of that. Again, it's understanding your organization, your critical data. It's not a quick exercise. So you meet with stakeholders, you understand the data that's being used. So, from a marketing perspective, the marketing director will say, I need my systems up and running, but in the grand scheme of things, unless you're a marketing company, marketing is not a critical service in a bank, for example. Yeah, so in terms of other regulatory, I haven't come across anything specific saying that you need to failover test once a year or twice a year. I know at our organization, we do, in terms of from a governance perspective, it's mandated that all key systems, and here's the caveat, is that it says key systems. So in an environment where you're operating more than 380 systems, you need to identify which are your key systems that you are going to fail over in a particular period. That's not to say that the other systems are not going to be tested, because sometimes you may have dependencies on other systems. So it's understanding those dependencies, understanding your organization, what their needs are, where the critical services lie, and ensuring that failover testing takes place on a continuous basis.
Wow. Kenneth, thanks for answering that question. I believe George has gotten a very good response on the frequency of companies performing their failovers. Yes, I also got intrigued by the primary exchanges of the systems on how to recognize their primary site and their secondary site. But I believe you might be open for further discussions on these topics. It's really interesting. It was deliberate for us to close on this question, which you have answered in different ways. What are your thoughts on risk in cloud platforms, and how would you mitigate these risks? So this question might have been answered at the section where you talked about risk in an organization. However, if you feel like, please take it on in the next few minutes.
Yeah, you know, like, yeah, thanks, Sharon. You know, some of these things, we can discuss it at length, and there's various dynamics to it. So it's very difficult to just answer in a very closed way, because, you know, again, depending on the size of the organization, what their needs are, all of those things. Because again, you know, something when it comes to cloud services, one needs to consider is that where is that data residing? Because, you know, when it comes to sovereignty of data, if you are making use of a Azure service, and that Azure service is being backed up in, or that cloud service it has a backup that's going to a facility in the US, it then becomes subject to some of the laws relevant to that jurisdiction. So, you know, with the Patriot Act in the US, the US government has or has the ability to access some of that information. So companies within Africa and Europe, generally, in terms of their agreement with an Azure cloud service, insist that we make use of their backup facilities in Ireland or in Frankfurt, for example. Again, the organization needs to do that risk assessment in terms of all of those things to understand from a contractual perspective, what is it that you're going to be getting yourself into when making use of cloud services. Now, remember, you kind of lose some sort of control when you make use of cloud services, and then you need to say, am I willing to accept that risk? Because, you know, if I'm using a SAP HANA as my ERP solution, and I'm have it in a cloud service environment, and if I have a dispute with the cloud service provider, they can switch me off, and then I won't have access to my ERP system, which is going to negatively impact my operations. So yes, again, it's not a one size fits all. I think the best approach to understanding when making the decision to go to a cloud, because, you know, there's lots of benefits in terms of going to cloud, from scalability and all of those things, cost reduction. But again, from an ownership perspective, one needs to look at what the risks are from that perspective. Oh, maybe I should also mention is that sometimes when you look at it, it's easy to go to the cloud, but say you now decide, okay, you want to exit the cloud. What are the steps that are needed for you to exit a cloud infrastructure? So that's why, when organizations start making the decision to go into the cloud, they should actually containerize some of their applications so it's more easily able to be removed from a cloud environment. Because once it gets there, it can become quite difficult to exit a cloud environment. And then you may be hit with large costs when it comes to maintenance and all of those things. So yeah, it's not a decision to be taken lightly. And it's important that companies, organizations, their boards and things like that are fully aware of the risks that are associated with some of these things. And hence it's needed that we have professionals like yourselves on the call to, to get certified, to get a better understanding of these environments, engage with other professionals and learn from them, because none of us have all of the answers. And even I am continuously learning each and every day, being made aware of things that I've never considered before. So it's vitally important that we have platforms like this, a webinar that ISACA Kampala is hosting, as well as other ISACA chapters, to learn from other, I want to say experts, but by no means do I consider myself an expert in anything. So, because we all are continuously learning every day.
Wow. According to the questions in the chat, in the Q&A, we've answered all. And Kenneth, you've really done this topic the best. We have gotten a lot from you. We have moved away from, we have moved in depth through threat intelligence and information sharing. We are exploring its role in enhancing cyber resilience. And there we are, we have gotten it all to the extent of risk management in organizations. We have spoken about cloud. So you've really done us great. We thank you very much, Kenneth. I believe the chapter is blessed to have you aboard. The Secretariat, Rita, I request to hand over to you. And this has been a great moment. We thank you very much, especially the people on call. Thank you very much, Kenneth. Rita, I hand over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Thank you very much, Paliam, for the insightful presentation on threat intelligence and information sharing. It was indeed an honor to host you this evening, and we hope this collaboration shall continue between ISACA South Africa and of course Kampala chapter and across the globe with our sister chapters. Thank you very much. I want to recognize a few directors and volunteers on call. We have our chapter president, Mr. Bernard Wanyama. Thank you for being with us. We have Mr. Lubega Joseph, our membership director. We have Ms. Emily May Mara, our marketing and communications director. We have Ms. Barbara Wagwire, our she leads tech and educations committee member. We have Mr. Bernard Rinaitwe, Marketing and Comms Committee, Mr. John Paul Kakembo, Marketing and Comms Committee. Thank you for joining us. We have Mr. George Njuguna from ISACA Kenya chapter. We have Terence Makweba from ISACA South Africa chapter, and many other members from ISACA from different sister chapters. Thank you for joining us this evening, and I take this opportunity to thank you all. We have a few announcements before I invite the president to join us this evening. The first announcement is on, just a second. Our next webinar is scheduled on 10th of August, and it will be on CIS controls framework, the new standards of cybersecurity compliance. We have our 12th annual East Africa Information Security Conference, which will be held on the 27th to the 29th of September at Speak Resort Munyonyo. Please plan to join and attend us. Our registration link shall be shared. We are going to post it in the chat. Please feel free to register and attend. Or it's all on our social media platforms already. We shall have, please don't forget to, for those who haven't renewed or want to join us, our half-year membership, half price for the rest of 2023 is already on. Please feel free to renew and pay half-year subscription. Just posting it on the chat for the members to take it on and add, and also call on other members to join us. At the end of the webinar, we shall have a survey. Please feel free to, we are requesting you to give us feedback on our webinar, and your feedback is of great help and valuable to us all. Thank you very much once again. At this time, I take this opportunity to invite our dear chapter president to give us to thank our speaker first of all, and to give us the closing remarks. Thank you very much. Mr. President, please take us away. Thank you. Mr. Bernard Wanyama. I don't know whether he has network issues. Then just, Mr. President, are you with us, please?
Rita, while we're waiting for Bernard to join, I have saved a copy of the presentation in the chat. So if you want to get a copy of that, you can just download it from the chat. And yeah, if you have any other questions, you can more than welcome to contact me, via LinkedIn, or if you have my contact details, and we can have a discussion on anything, or if you need any assistance when it comes to anything related to ISACA.
Hello, Sharon.
Please.
The president has connectivity issues. He's trying to connect, but he has failed. But I think we can continue. I once again want to take this opportunity to thank the South Africa ISACA chapter president for accepting the invitation. We hope that it shall continue, and this handshake is going to continue. This is not the end. Thank you very much for accepting to present on for ISACA Kampala chapter, and we are grateful. We thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for on call for joining us this evening. Don't forget to join us on the 10th of August. At this point, I beg to close the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon, for moderating this session. Thank you, Sharon, for moderating this session. Thank you, admins, for organizing this.
You're welcome, Madam. Thank you very much, Kenneth.
Yes, thank you, Sharon.